I have ranked many things in RimWorld, from weapons to armor to factions and biomes, and now with Biotech released, I get to rank a lot more things. So today, I'm ranking the new Xenotypes. There's 10 base new Xenotypes in the game, and I'll be ranking them based on their genes. Some are very good, some are very bad, some are somewhere in between, and that then in the end together makes these Xenotypes really good, or really bad, or something in between. As always, of course, there will be that coolness factor that might prevail for one of these Xenotypes over the other, but anyway, let's get into it and start ranking. First, we have the dirt moles. These are the people who love to live underground, who love to mine, and who love to basically be inside and never go outside into the bad sun, because sun gives them a really big mood debuff and they basically hate it. But I also have one really good gene that I very much appreciate, and that is the fast wound healing, which basically means their wounds heal twice as fast, and that in my colonies, that is extremely important because I always play on the highest difficulties, which means I always get constantly raided. People are always cranky and fighting each other, which means that somebody that can heal much faster is very useful. And of course, dirt moles, get their buffs for mining. They have the dark vision, which means that when they are inside, they don't have any problems with darkness if they're deep in the mine somewhere. They are also slow runners, which just makes them slow pokes, and that's not that big of a deal. And then they have nearsighted, which means that their long and medium range aiming is gonna be worse than any other person, but that I don't think is too big of a deal. I think it just makes them perfect for something like a shotgun, or if you don't want shotguns, because let's be real, they're not the best weapons, these guys would then be perfect to maybe equip them with something like EMP grenades or EMP launchers that have AoE damage that will be used against mechs. And if they get hit, because they might be closer, then they will heal twice as fast. All in all, I think dirt moles are actually a really good new Xenotype, and I'm gonna put it up here in the A tier. Next, we have Jennies. Jennies are the crafters. They're these smart boys, they're intellectual and crafting people that, once again, they stay indoors, they craft, and, well, they do not go close to any danger, because they do have, like, these two very, very bad traits there. One is Wimp, that everybody's gonna say, hey, but you can do a brain implant and fix that. Sure, okay, one is fixable. The other one is Delicate, which means they take more damage. And, once again, when you play RimWorld on higher difficulties, you really want everybody in the colony to be able to contribute in defense of the colony, so if they take more damage, that's a problem. No longer being Wimp, if you install that in their brain, that just means they will just get destroyed, because they will not drop because of pain, they will just drop of too many injuries, and because they're delicate, those injuries gonna stock up fast. So that is their main downside, but what is their upside? Of course, we all know they're already good at crafting, they're good at intellectual. Most importantly, they have the elongated fingers, which means their manipulation is increased. Manipulation is one of the most important stats that you can buff up for your colonists, so that really makes them really good. And also, they will never social fight, and their breaks cannot be violent, which definitely makes them good. But in the end, I still think being delicate and being a wimp is such a big downfall for them that I will put them into B tier. Otherwise, they would be much higher. Next on the list, we have Highmates. Highmates have a big problem because they are incapable of violence, and I guess once again I have to say it, that being capable of violence is very important when you're playing RimWorld, because apparently everything and everyone wants to murder you or kidnap you or just burn your colony to the ground. So you will always need somebody else that protects Highmates. You know what? It would be a really cool playthrough if you just went with everybody being a Highmate. That would be interesting. I want to see it. Somebody do it and show me some screenshots, how long you can survive. Once again, they're also delicate. So if they are actually in danger, they will take extra damage. But they have a lot of good things. Well, some of them are better than the other. They have that unique ability where they can psychically bond with their mate. Their romance attempts will always succeed. So if they need to romance somebody, it's 100%. So you can always bond them to somebody. But if that person dies, or if they die, the other person is gonna be having a really bad time, probably something like a catatonic breakdown, and you don't really want to see this, so you will have to protect the Highmate. And this comes again back to that, you are basically having a person that buffs somebody else's mood, which in the end, I don't know, it's not that amazing to me. They're also size sensitive, which it's supposed to be a good thing for them, but in my opinion, it's not the best, because when you have psychic ships dropping on your base, they'll feel it a lot more. But they also have the sanguine genes, so they'll usually be a very happy person, so you don't really get to see Highmates breaking down unless their bondmate dies. They're also awful at mining, they're awful at plants, basically no menial work. These guys are gonna be your social people. If you get one that is good at crafting or intellectual, then that can be a really useful colonist. If they're not, then this colonist is not gonna be that great. Now, all of these xenotypes are very well balanced. I personally would actually never put anybody out of these into S tier or F tier, but because I have to, and they're incapable of violent, I'm sorry Highmates, you are going to F tier. Next on the list we have Hussars. These guys are basically the super soldiers of the Rim. Surprisingly, in my current series that I'm doing, which you should totally check out, I haven't actually met many. I've been raided by pretty much everybody else, but Hussars are not often in there. Still, they are very, very good at what they do. Basically, fight. They have the unstoppable gene, which means that the damage they receive doesn't slow them down, so they just keep on going. You know, they're good at fighting from melee or with range weapons. They're tolerant to heat, they're tolerant to cold, they're kind of tolerant to pollution, like 50%, not fully anti-toxic lungs, but partial. They also have super fast wound healing, which is basically doubled of that of dirt moles. So really, for combat, when it comes to combat, these guys are great, but they have issues. They have the go juice dependency, which, let's be real, if you have a decent colony, that shouldn't be really hard to fix. They're bad at plants, they're bad at animals, artistic, social, basically stuff like social like that. It's gonna always be a problem for them, but you know, really not a big deal if they're good at something else. They're also psychically deaf, which I think the game thinks it's a bad thing, but in my opinion, actually it's a good thing, because once again, when you have psychic ships dropping, these guys are not gonna feel it. So in my opinion, that is good. But of course, if you're playing with royalty and you know, you're trying to make somebody use psycasts, then Hussars are not gonna be your choice. Their main downfall is being hyper aggressive, which is, you know, it is reasonable because they are super soldiers. Oh, I forgot to mention, they also have reduced pain, so they feel pain less, which means they'll just keep on going until they're so injured they're gonna fall down, which might not be the best, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, hyper aggressive means that their breaks are always gonna be violent, which means that if you have these guys in the colony and if you're playing on higher settings and if, you know, they're not satisfied, these guys are gonna break and then they're gonna break some other people, and they're usually gonna fight until the end. Well, not until the end, but until somebody is downed. So that is their main issue, you know, when you have them in your colony. So you're really gonna need to have a lot of drugs to keep them mentally satisfied, but you know, that thing really puts them down. Otherwise, I would definitely put them into A tier, but I think that one just brings it down to B. Next, we have Impids. Everybody knows these guys now because they spew fire, but that's really the only thing they kind of do. They're a bit underwhelming, the poor Impids. They're basically tribals that have fire now. It doesn't really make them good, because especially they will usually spew fire in such a way that they can't reach your colonists, and which point your colonists are going to use their, I don't know, shotguns and rifles to just mow them down, and they will not be able to do much. If you're playing in a desert, then they would be a good choice probably, because they are very heat tolerant. They also don't take as much damage from fire. I think it's like only a quarter damage from fire, which really makes them unique and cool, but in the end, not that useful probably, especially since they have a lot of weaknesses. These guys are pessimists, which definitely does not help. They also have weak immunity, which means they gain immunity like 10% slower, something like that. They have slow wound healing, which means it takes them like twice as long to heal their wounds, which is actually terrible because they're gonna spend more time lying down instead of working for you. Really, the poor impets, their negatives are kind of stacking for them. They have poor plants, poor animals, they don't really like cold. So in the end, I think unfortunately impets are gonna go into C tier. These guys are definitely fighting with Highmates for the F tier, but since Highmates cannot fight and impets can, I think this is more appropriate. Next on the list we have Neanderthals, another tribal set. These guys, they're stupid, unfortunately. Well, they're not stupid really, but their intellectual is lowered. I think their shooting is also lowered. They are not very good at that. So if you want melee people, these guys are gonna be it, because they also have reduced pain, just like Hussars, and they also have robust, which means they take 25% less damage, which in my opinion is an amazing and like S tier trait or gene. They also have strong immunity. They're better at melee combat. They are tolerant to heat and cold. Basically, these guys are all-arounders, pretty good, but you know, since we did say they're stupid, they're also aggressive. They're not hyper-aggressive, so their breaks are not always gonna be violent, but it's much higher percent chance that their breaks will be violent, and you know, they'll once again beat up the person that they go fight against. They're also slowpokes, so that doesn't really work for them, but still, Neanderthals, I think, are really strong, like mid tier Xenotype, so we're gonna put them out here into B tier. Next on the list we have Pigskins. First, can I just say, fuck the rough pig union and their grenades. They also always come with grenades and just throw them at everybody and everything. Also themselves, but still. These guys can be pretty obnoxious when you have like 100 of them showing up, because they're pretty tough. And when I say pretty tough, I mean they have reduced pain, which means they will keep on going. They will not drop as fast. They also have strong immunity, so these guys, you know, it makes them pretty sturdy. Now, their main issue here is having those trotter hands, which lowers their manipulation by 15%. And that, in my opinion, is pretty freaking bad. Not only that, they are also nearsighted, just like dirt moles, so basically no wonder these guys use grenades. They are really not going to be good if you send them out shooting stuff. So grenades or other AoE weapons might be the best for pigskins. Now, they actually can eat raw food, and really they don't really care about cooking them. That's why they have lowered cooking, because they gain as much nutrition from raw food as they would from a cooked meal, and they get no debuff for that. And also their stomachs make them immune to food poisoning. Still, in combat, these guys are worse than the problem the dirt moles have. But I think because of their manipulation being lowered, that just makes them so much worse, because manipulation really affects everything you do in this game. And it's such an important stats that because of that, I think I'm gonna have to put them into C tier. Next on the list, we have Sangrophages. And yes, as I said with Highmates, if you have to have S and F tier, these guys have to be S tier. And I'm not gonna talk about all of their traits or all of their genes because there's too many of them, and I don't really want to spoil everything for some people that might have not met them in the game yet. But yes, they have so many positives from those genes. So let's maybe just focus on a couple of negatives. They hate fire. They take 4 times the amount from fire damage. So that really is what can hurt them the most. Now, my main problem is, once again, in the series that I'm doing on YouTube right now, we do have Sangrophages in our colony. And when you are in combat and there's some fire out there, they're gonna break and they're gonna start fleeing and you can't control them. And usually, being smart as remote colonists as they are, they will run into the fire. Which then, you know, could be problematic. But anyway, Sangrophages can't really die from normal things. They can only die if their brain gets destroyed. So yes, very powerful. They do have that thing, they need to drink blood, but usually you will just have like 1 prisoner basically is enough. Otherwise, they can drink blood from their own friends and it's gonna be only like a minor debuff. So Sangrophages, they deserve to be S tier. They are extremely powerful. Who is not so extremely powerful but also pretty strong is Wasters, who are gonna be the next Xenotype that we're gonna talk about. I really like these guys. Even though they're ugly, they're aggressive, they have psychite dependency. So if you don't feed them psychite drugs, in a couple of days they're gonna start complaining about it, then they're gonna go into deficiency, and then in the end they're gonna drop into coma and then die. So you really need drugs for these guys, but they come with some pretty good benefits. They have the total antitoxic lungs, which when you live in pollution or if there's toxic fallout or something like that, they'll just be fine. They will have no problems with that, and I really love that, because these guys basically can live in any environment that, you know, with biotech, stuff can easily get polluted these days. And then when you live in that polluted land, they have the pollution stimulus that basically, when they are in the polluted lands, it stimulates them, it increases their manipulation, their consciousness. Well, actually, it increases their consciousness, which then increases their manipulation and sight and walk and all that stuff, I believe. So they are buffed basically by living in terrible lands. I really like that. They also have the super immunity, so they gain immunity much faster. They will not have any problems with any diseases or with any infections, something like that, which in my opinion is really important. So, you know, they don't spend as much time in a hospital bed if they're hurt. And I think wasters are just good. All around good, even though they need drugs, but those drugs are usually not that big of a deal. I will actually put them into A tier. I think their coolness factor really wins with the wasters. If I had to use the coolness factor on one of these factions, I would do it on wasters. The last xenotype, that is the one where I would definitely not use the coolness factor, because these guys are basically furries, and who in the world ever liked furries? Oh, joking. I'm joking before you burn me to the ground. Okay, Yidakins. They're kind of cool, you know, they're Chewbacca's that come running at you and then they shoot you in the face, and then you realize they're not so cool anymore because they just raided you. These guys are pirates most likely. So yeah, Yiddikin, they're pretty cool, but they have a couple of big issues in my opinion. They have the slow wound healing, which is never good, and they have what I think the game wants it to be a positive gene, but in my opinion is a negative gene, is because they have naked speed. So when they have clothing, they're slower. When they're naked, they're faster. And their other genes kind of wants them to be naked because their fur skin basically removes all of the negative debuffs that you would get from nakedness. And they kind of prefer to be nude, which in my opinion is bad because, you know, armor is such a great and important thing. You never want nudists in your colony ever, because it's just, you know, everything tries to kill you. You need armor. And these guys are like, yeah, no, I have fur. Why would I need armor? They are robust, so they do take less damage, and that is a big bonus for them. They are robust. They also have strong melee damage, so they'll come running at you and they'll do more damage, so beware. And they have their very unique ability, which is the animal war call. So when they walk past an animal, they can just yell out, and that animal is gonna go berserk and is gonna go join them in the fight, which can be really useful. And I do want to do a series at some point where I would have like furry raiders, where you just drop a bunch of furries on the enemy base and then just yell at animals and send the animals to go attack, which would be kind of cool. But I think they do have too many negatives there. The slow wound healing that I mentioned is really bad, because, you know, you want these were supposedly good fighters to not lie in bed half of the time trying to heal from the wounds they will receive. They also, while they have naked speed, they are aggressive, which means that they're more likely to have violent breaks, which can be bad. And they're sleepy, which means they need to sleep like 40% more or something like that, which is also, again, terrible because they're spending more time in bed instead of actually doing stuff. So, Yiddikin, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to put you out here in the C tier. And there you go, I have ranked all the xenotypes. I have probably talked way too much that I needed to about some of these, and definitely not enough about some of the others. I'm sure you guys agree or disagree with some of my choices. Tell me, what would you put into S tier, what would you put into F tier, and how was your experience so far with biotech and all of these new xenotypes? And I'll see you next time.